Want to know who we are? Let's start here. We do this, that, and we make all of these. We're here to connect and power just about everything around you. We help you save energy. We're not trying to save the world, but we are making the most of our energy and resources and making access to energy and digital basic human rights. Life is on.
What are some of the things that signal a manufacturer's PLCs, SCADA, HMA, any other control devices are ready for an upgrade?
That's an interesting question. Very broad question, but very interesting. I think there's many factors to consider, but I think I would categorize it into three little buckets. I think the first thing is when you look at upgrades and when is the right time to upgrade your PLCs or automation equipment, it comes down to what is the customer or the manufacturing facility's appetite to stay abreast of technology. I think one of the things we see in the industrial sector today is that you have a lot of aged plants, and some of that is manufacturers today may not have the appetite or maybe not even the funding to upgrade or to change equipment. So I think that's the first part, is the appetite to stay abreast of technology and to have the upgrades done. I think the second thing to look at or to factor in is the age of the equipment. As control systems age, there's risk of failure and fatigue at the component level, which results in downtime. So obviously that's a key criteria to take into place when you consider when is the right time to upgrade. And I think the last one is regulation. As more stringent manufacturing principles get put in place, we see a greater regulation towards safety and safe manufacturing processes. And I think manufacturers have to look at their automation lines and their production lines and have a look at the level of equipment and the level of safety inside the equipment. And again, depending on where they are versus what the regulation stipulates, it might be a good time to upgrade. So I think it's a few things that come into play all at the same time. And I think as manufacturers start looking at their plants and they factor these three things, I think a lot of the time these decisions get made for themselves automatically. But then again, it comes down to the cost and then the appetite. But I think there's so much of solutions in the market today that fit the various budgets, if you so to say. But I think overall, if you factor in those three key components, I think it'd be a very, very good broad criteria of how to assess your plant.
I totally agree. There's kind of two aspects to this, and one is how much longer can I really leverage the existing infrastructure that I have? Can I still get parts? Can I still support it in case I have issues? That's on one front. But I think the thought leaders are driving and drive more to the aspect of what do I need to accomplish moving forward, and is that control system going to get me there? So those two aspects, I think, really drive a big component of some of the legacy infrastructure and what people want their control system to do moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, as Sanjit was saying, there are a lot of options now that you can tack on onto what you already have. I mean, obviously, it's not always the most ideal solution, but there are things that you can do to sort of take that next step and get a bit more connected. Christian, as a systems integrator, what's the biggest challenge that you see that tends to hold manufacturers back from making a control systems upgrade?
Good question, Christina. Actually, there is a lot of reasons holding manufacturers to embrace the new technology. Specifically in terms of upgrading their ICS, mainly what we face when it comes to modernization is our customer misunderstanding the risk they all face. Once those risks are acknowledged, then they'll find that they all boil down to production loss. And when management understands that, then they will quickly move on to modernization. One other thing is that we often see old school veterans that have become experts at repairing electronic boards, VFDs and such. And today, not only that these repairs are getting more complex, but they require all new sets of tools. And also, those veterans are retiring. So thus, it's contributing a lot in raising the risk of longer downtime. So that's what we feel.
Vic, how about you? What do you think is the biggest challenge holding manufacturers back from upgrading?
Yeah, so I think it's, to a big degree, I don't see a lot of, senior people in senior positions with the correct mindset, in that, they may not truly understand today's technology and how it can deliver to achieve the business goal. There's fear of moving data outside of their environment, and as much as you try to convince them that it's safe, it's secure, it takes a monumental effort to try to hack into that data. They still have the hesitancy. Nope, not my data. It's not going anywhere other than these four walls. And even when you explain to them, well, your data right now is residing in a data center that's halfway around the continent, they still have this unease of looking at the technology that's available today that's going to meet and exceed your business expectations. So that I find, a bit of a stumbling block, if you will.
Sanjit, do you want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I think I'll echo what Christian and Vic said as well. I think those are the perfect buckets to put that into. I will say one of the things that I've seen a lot is the knowledge and expertise on modern or new control systems. I think as human beings we are creatures of habit, and there's an old maintenance or plant saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And sometimes you have that mentality where the plant's been working and it's 8 years old or 10 years old, in some cases 20 years old. You don't want to touch it, right? Because on the day you do, it's going to break. And I think some of that mentality holds us back from trying new technology and moving into what's new. So I think for me that's what really stands out is that appetite to try new technology and to venture away from what we know today to what's new and what's modern and what's going to be the next evolution in industrial controls.
Okay. John, do you want to add anything on that one?
The one aspect that I think I'd add to this discussion is the notion that availability of systems, while being being critical in almost every industrial process, we're seeing more and more of these industrial systems that are moving into areas of infrastructure. And likely what I hear from a lot of my customers is I may have 1 or 2 hours a year that I can be down, that they can be scheduled to be down. And that downtime to them is such a problem. So what they face here is that the risk of, well, if I try to take this down to an upgrade, do I have to put 2 systems up simultaneously? And very often you see these guys trying to change out the engines on the airplane while the thing's still in flight. It's a very difficult balancing act. And that balancing act is one that no one takes the risk lightly. So that risk to their, to the availability of their systems, and a lot of times they may not just be manufacturing, but they may be, handling water production or handling water cleaning or generating power, and so many different aspects of this industry that we see these things used at. And we're seeing more and more segregation of systems to be able to handle that. So the monolithic nature of a lot of the old school systems actually led to this. Well, to touch anything, I had to bring everything down. So, we're starting to see things become more segregated. Well, this aspect of this manual is that so that I can keep control going if I want to update this optimization system, let's say on the side here. So we're finding more ways that we can elegantly leverage things like the cloud, where nobody would typically put control systems in the cloud, but you can bring that to bear because the cloud also brings certain areas of things like, upgrading on the fly to other aspects of that. That's second nature to things you do in the cloud. Does anybody have to go and upgrade their Netflix? No one has to do that. It's just handled for you. And those types of notions, and we'll start seeing them permeate into industrial space eventually to address these areas of downtime.